Thank you, Pascal, for the music. Bonjour, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, wherever you are. Thank you for joining us for this 42 UFI Connect session. I'm Mina El-Fazazi, I'm Head of Comms at UFI, and I'm really happy to moderate this session. I want to say hello. If you want to say hello and tell us where you're from in the chat, that would be great as well. A bit of housekeeping before starting. Mics are muted to avoid any interference, and we will try, of course, to make the session as interactive as possible. So feel free to use the chat on the right-hand side to ask questions to the speakers, to share any statement. The UFI team will come to you, and hopefully we will get you involved a bit later on. So yesterday, we all celebrated women around the world, and in recognition to the International Women's Day and 2021 campaign theme #ChooseToChallenge, we've decided at UFA to raise awareness about women's equality in exhibitions, because from challenge comes the change. So equality is critical for the exhibitions industry, and this is a really interesting topic that affects all of us. How to further equality in exhibition? Where are we today? Our wonderful mixed gender panel will share their vision and insights. And with us today, Mary Larkin, President, Diversified Communications USA. Hello, Mary. Hervé Sedky, President and CEO of Emerald. Hello, Hervé.
Hello. Nice
and
to be here.
Koussée, thanks. Koussée Vaneecke, Divisional Managing Director from Comexposium, France. Hello, Koussée.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We'll start with one question. There have been many initiatives over the years to redress the balance of senior women in the industry, but they usually come and go and don't gain much traction. So do you think, as an industry, we've finally turned a corner and this is now the time where we can start to make real and continual change? Over to you, Mary.
So, good morning, everyone, and happy International Women's Day, or I'll just say week, why not? So just having been very much a part of the movement, you know, both through CISO and UFI, I do feel that we have turned a corner. I don't necessarily know, I think it'll stick for a while. I agree that it has some traction right now. I think once you see more women moving up in director level positions, vice president level positions, that type of thing, you might actually see some more change at the very top. Those numbers are still roughly the same from what I can see, you know, where as we move up through an organization, the number of women represented at senior levels is fewer. So, but I do think we have turned the corner. I am heartened by the women who have actually started to really drive the case forward. You know, I was on a stage with Hervé and Courtney Muller and Lisa Hammond a number of years back, and sitting on that stage, I remember actually saying it out loud that I thought there was some risk in actually speaking out for women in our industry, that we needed to step up and be recognized and be considered for those senior positions. So at that time, I remember thinking, oh, this is risky. I don't know how this is going to be received. And then I thought, you know what, if you don't stand up for what you believe in, you're part of the problem, not part of the solution. So I've continued to do that. And I know there are many women, and I see many of them on this screen this morning. But I think what we need to do now is, you know, we've talked a lot about women in senior positions, as you've said, Mina, but I think what we need to be doing now is get more women into director positions, so more women into that senior management position, so that there are opportunities and women are more visible in senior roles to be able to move into that C-suite.
Thank you, Mary. Perfect. What about you, Hervé?
So, I think we're less bad than we used to be, maybe. But, I think we've got a really long way to go, to be honest. I think from my perspective, it's definitely a men's club out there. I think the numbers speak for themselves. I was just researching ahead of this call. 7.4% of Fortune 500 CEOs are women. 7.4%, I repeat, are women. That's a very, very small number. Only 2 female Black CEOs, which is also crazy. There's a McKinsey study that revealed that women remain significantly outnumbered in entry-level management positions. We're talking about 2020 here. We're not talking about years ago. So they held 38% of the manager level jobs. So 62% were men. So yes, maybe we're in politics. Same thing. If you look at politics, last year in the U.S., we celebrated this amazing number of new women who were appointed to the U.S. Congress. But the number now, even after this massive increase, is at 24%. So the U.S. ranks 76th in global ranking of women in government. Rwanda ranks as number 1 with approximately 50% of women in Congress. The U.S. is tied for 76th position with Afghanistan. So we've got a long ways to go. I think there's another study that said that 30% of women in the company say that their companies are not doing enough, whereas the vast majority of men are saying that actually we're doing a lot more and we're moving in the right direction. There's a disconnect. I think yes. I think things are better for sure, but I think I also need to be blunt here and say that one, I don't really understand what it's like, obviously, to be a woman, much less a woman in the workplace, much less a working mom. I mean, those are really, really, really complicated things for men to understand. I'm very, very, very far away from understanding the complexity of that. Vice President Kamala Harris noted that 2.5 million women have left the workplace in 2020. So this pandemic has created, as she called it, a national emergency. Things are getting worse because of the pandemic, and women are not choosing to leave their jobs. They're leaving the jobs because the brunt of childcare falls on women, and the pandemic has exposed some real cracks that we have in our society and in our workforce. So I think from my perspective, we can pat ourselves on the back and say, yes, we're moving in the right direction. Things are getting better, but we also have to be really honest with ourselves that we're far away from being a society that's taking this seriously, and we need to. And I think leaders like CEOs need to be accountable, need to be held accountable, and not just to profits, but to diversity, to truly diversify their workforce. And there are many reasons for that. It's right for society, but it's actually even better for business. And so that's why I'm trying to play my part, even though I know very little about this topic and certainly can't speak from experience. I'm trying to do my part to learn, to understand, and to make a difference.
Thank you, Hervé. Very interesting. And Koussée, you joined the industry 3 years ago, I believe. Maybe you have something to share with us about what you think about equality in exhibitions. What's your thought on that?
Yes, you're right, Mina. I joined the industry 3 years ago. So I can't give a historical perspective on this equality in exhibition industry, but I'm working in France for 20 years now. And when I joined the events industry, when I joined Comexposium, I was amazed. I was surprised by the balance of senior female leaders in this industry compared to all the other companies I worked for. So I think that change is happening, and I'd like to share some of my personal experience. because I started after my business school in marketing. So I worked in very feminine environments, but almost all leaders, directors were male. And it makes you wonder when you start your career. So at school, I worked hard and I got good grades. And then I moved on the next class. And at work, I worked hard. I see other women, older women, more experienced women work hard. I saw that women were more numerous than men, but all the directors were men. So it's like a bug. It's like a big bug. And I experienced this bug for 10 years. And between my internships and my employment, I worked for L'Oréal, Mondelez, Unilever, Danone Group, Pernod Ricard, and it was the same everywhere. And it was like I had different ways to react, and I reacted differently at different stages of my life. So at first I was thinking, okay, it's just a sum of individual cases. I thought that maybe it's just men were the directors because they were the more, like they had more skills, they were more experienced, it's just normal. But it's an illusion, you can't think this for a very long time. So my second reaction afterwards was detachment. And say, okay, I work for a living. And detachment led me to like just quit and start my own company and with my own rules. And my last step was to say, okay, so I will try to change things from the inside. So when I joined again a company, being an entrepreneur, it has convinced me of my impact. It revealed my own leadership. So when I joined the company again, I was not asking for authorizations to act anymore. So, and at last I was given the jobs that matched the idea I had of my leadership. And what I can say that the result, today I'm a managing director, and I think that it's the result of me changing the way I react, changing my mind, but it's also the result of a real change in mentalities, because 10 years went through and mentalities changed, and society was ready to give me opportunities I could seize. So I think that change is happening.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing, Koussée. So obviously there's a shift in minds, but it feels like there is an embedded thinking within the event industry, and of course not only our industry, that diversity and gender equality issues could be a potential distraction that could endanger the business. So like, for example, sales might drop, or too much time taken from the team's core task and so on. So are these some elements of truth, and what do you suggest? Who wants to start?
I want to comment.
Go ahead, Mary.
I just want to comment on both what Hervé and Koussée had to say. I think we should celebrate the fact that there has been a turning of the corner. And as Hervé said, there is a long way to go. I think some of the comments you made about sales dropping, I honestly think that's an excuse and nothing more than an excuse. I think it's a way to continue to facilitate the boys' club, to be honest. Because it's alive and well, as Hervé mentioned. I think also there is so much data out there, and and it's recent data. When Hervé said about 2020 data, unfortunately, it's a bit of a slap in the face for women who have come up through organizations. And I totally understand Koussée's perspective on detachment. I've been there. It's like, okay, what's the point, you know? But I think the opportunities now with the data showing that female-led organizations or boards with more than 2 female leaders perform better in stock price, on multiple metrics that are used in business, that they outperform over a shorter period of time. And all of that data does need to be emphasized. And I don't know what the block is. I think the visibility is the issue. When Koussée, when you said that, or it's part of the issue, there's many issues, but when you said that you could seize those opportunities, having women visible, I sat in a meeting when we were discussing VP teams in my company, and it was, the CEO and the senior leadership knew all the men. They did not know the women because they were in their offices working. You know, so it's not that the men weren't. Don't get me wrong. It's just they network differently. So there's so many aspects to that. But if somebody told me that sales dropped because they had a female leader, I'll not tell you what I'd say. So, oh, sorry, Hervé, I interrupted you, but.
No, I think you've made the point really well, Mary. I completely agree. As a matter of fact, I honestly, I don't actually, the question itself, I think is not based in fact. I think to Mary's point, if we just go back survey after survey, result after result, whether you look at performance of a marketing campaign in a consumer products company or in a credit card company, when they have a diverse team that actually manage that particular campaign, the results are stronger, because if you have a diverse team that represents your customers, you yield better results. If you look to Mary's point about stock performance of diverse companies with diverse leadership or boards, they perform better. There's a survey that said for every 10-point increase in gender equity, you increase your revenue by 1 to 2%. Forget who had that study, but it's a study that's out there. So the results do not at all point to the question that you ask, and I think therefore it can only be seen as an excuse by some to not want to focus on this issue for whatever reason.
Thank you, Hervé. Koussée, would you like to add something?
Yes, I do agree with Hervé and Mary, but I do think you have a point, Mina, because it's more that in the event industry, we really have impact on overall society. We have an impact on all society because we are the one putting the spotlights on key leaders of each industry. Because when we do our events, when we do our conferences, so we put the lights on some leaders, so we co-create these leaders, and so we can help women by putting the spotlights on them. So it's like our responsibility to do this in the event industry. But what is the reality of this responsibility? What do we do to help women and promote this gender equality? And I'm very disappointed with the reality. There are some industries like cybersecurity I have in my portfolio. It's difficult. There are so few women, but in other industry like retail or e-commerce, it's an industry more balanced in terms, more gender balanced. And when we do events for this industry, we come often with programs with 80% of male speakers. And really, this is really when you say choose to challenge, really I had this situation several times. And because of the pace of our industry, because so many things are happening, I was all the time prioritizing other actions that were more contributors for turnover, for margin. And so I chose not to challenge because I was concentrated and focused on turnover margin and not on challenging the program and making a difference for some women and for the industry. So I guess you have a point, Mina, on this.
Thank you, Koussée. Thank you, Mary and Hervé. So obviously it's not easy to achieve change, and we want to do something about equality in exhibition and equality, but not only talking. So can you share with us a personal experience of when you have taken or when you have, when you've seen or benefited from some action that fought against gender bias and inequality? Any personal experience or that you can share with us today? Who wants to start?
I can start. So to achieve gender equality, first thing is that women should want this senior position. And when I discussed career with the women in my team, I was surprised to see that it's not a given. It's not obvious. Many women don't want senior position, leadership positions, because they think that it's too demanding. They want more balanced lives. And so they think that it's too that my position, for instance, is too stressful, too demanding. But what I can say is that my job today is not more stressful than my first job as brand manager. All the positions I had were stressful, but there is one difference. I'm paid much more. And the other things I want to say is that I wish I had fought harder for inclusion. I wish that I had fought harder for diversity, to be more welcoming with my colleagues when they got back from maternity leave, for instance. I forgive myself because I have the feeling that I spent 20 years as a woman, as a Black woman. I have spent these 20 years fighting to move on the ladder, to fall off, to move forward. And so I spent a lot of energy on my own battle. And so I helped. But it was not enough. I would have liked to do better for this. So what I do today is that I seek for diversity in my teams. So I try really to, when some positions are opened, I try to include resume of people from diversity, because many people from diversity reach out by LinkedIn asking for positions. So it's not, these profiles are not always selected by the teams, but change takes time, so you need to go on.
Thank you, Koussée. What's your thought on that, Mary or Hervé?
Hervé, do you want to go?
Sure, happy to. I guess, I have a very a different perspective, given, as a man, I've been fortunate to have some of the things that, that through my career, like really good mentorship, and so I haven't experienced a lot of the issues that we're dealing with here today. And I think things that have been learnings for me are to be a lot more sensitive to issues that impact women in the workplace, working women in the workplace, and to not just focus on the obvious, but listen in a bit more carefully to some of the signals that are there. So there are, sitting in meetings, speaking over a woman, or repeating something that has already been said by a woman executive, is something that I try to pay attention to. The other thing are things like you know, a man who picks up his child from school is seen as a really, really, you know, good dad and a good person. When the same thing happens and a woman does that, they're sometimes and can often be seen as either, you know, distracted or less reliable. So there is a real difference in how men and women are perceived. And I think leaders have to be very conscious of that and have to proactively, they have to act on that. They can't just sit there and let the normal biases take over in order to make a true difference. You know, men are, you know, if you think about confidence is really, you know, valued in men, whereas confident women are sometimes portrayed as, you know, being aggressive. So those are things that I'm learning. I've got such a long way to go, and I know that, but trying to learn from mistakes of the past, trying to learn from experiences that I've seen or witnessed or heard about, is how I would answer that, Mina.
Thank you, Hervé. Mary, do you want to add something?
Yeah, there are a couple of things. One, when Koussée was talking about pay, that is the one area, you know, part of your question was, you know, was there a time that we stood up for gender inequality? And, you know, as a woman, that I've had to fight that case many times, not just personally, but for my own staff. And two examples. One, and actually I heard one example last night, and I was sort of horrified at how broad the number is, but we had a discussion about two people in the same sort of role. Yeah, there were nuances, you know, in terms of experience or size of portfolio or whatever, but there was $3,000 of difference in salary. And my male colleague said that, you know, it's only $3,000, it's fine. Well, out came the calculator. And that $3,000 for that particular person at their point in their career was $169,000 less earnings than their male counterpart, with all the other stipulations that go with it in terms of bonuses and retirement funds and all of that. And but I heard a story, I think it was last night, about something like that several $1,000s over the course of a woman's career can be about $400,000. So translated to euros or whatever, it does have an impact. Yet women control 70% of spending. Women, you know, consumer spending. There's a lot of things that have an economic impact because we are not focusing on pay inequality. So, and Koussée mentioned about worrying or spending all the time focused on her own story, on her own journey. I did the same. I did the same when I was at Kellogg, which was in 2012. All these women who are like from the State Department, from Discover Card, major companies and government agencies in the US, many of them were further in their career than I was at the time, were saying, you know, I'm here to focus on what I can do to help other women. And I thought, I can't help anyone until I can help myself. And so, but once things started to turn in my career and I made the inroads that I had to make to get to do what I wanted to do, I was able to focus then on other women. And that is something that I think women do benefit from. We do support each other moving up through the organization. And to Hervé's point, in President Obama's cabinet, there was an agreement between many of the women in that cabinet that when they were manterrupted, as the term is, or misrepresented, or their idea wasn't recognized, those women actually said, I would like to bring back to what female X said or what female Y said. So they were actually supporting each other through that. So there's a long way to go, but I also think that women can benefit from supporting each other through that too. So, but I think there's tons of opportunities where we do make a stand for gender equality and diversity in race or creed or whatever. You know, I think there's many examples that we probably live every day and don't realize it.
Thank you, Mary. Very enlightening. As you know, this is an open discussion. So if you please use the chat function to ask your questions and the UFI team will come to you. But before, I'd like to ask a question to Hervé. We understand that sometimes for some men, the conversation or this topic can trigger all sorts of feeling, including fear to be overthrown, to be cast aside because of quotas and so on. So what can we say to them? Are all of these fears valid? What's your thought on that?
Yeah, I think it's a false narrative. I think that many men probably do believe that. I think it's absolutely the case. There are obviously a lot of issues. If there weren't, we would have a much better outcome. Having said that, I personally believe that you can do two things at once. So you can manage two quotas and things that need to be done, and also create a real diverse strategy for your company where you have diversity at all levels. I really fundamentally believe that the two parts of adding diversity and having excellence in terms of the selection of the people are not mutually exclusive. Those are two things that need to be worked together. You have excellence in picking the best candidate and have diversity. Those aren't two different ideas at all. We also, in our industry in particular, should not have this problem because we have a phenomenal pipeline. So at junior levels, we have more women than men. So we have this amazing pipeline of talent. So the question is, are we doing enough to meaningfully include women, to meaningfully include other diverse candidates as leadership jobs open up? And I think the reality and the answer to that is we're not. We don't have rules that mandate, for instance, that you have to have a diverse slate of candidates in many companies around the world. I think Koussée made the point earlier, and I think it's critical. I think it sounds like you're doing it, Koussée. I think everyone needs to do it. I think it has to be part of running a business that you have true diversity and true representation of women, of diverse candidates when you make selections. And we should not allow decisions to be made if the slate of candidates being reviewed is not diverse. And so I really feel very, very strongly that we should not separate excellence from diversity and doing the right thing. Those are, in my opinion, two really important things and can absolutely be managed together.
Okay. Thank you very much, Hervé. I'd like to ask a question to Mary and Koussée about the policies you have in your organization to, for instance, implement the things you mentioned earlier. Can you share with us?
Sure. So we do a salary review every year to make sure that we don't, and our HR department keeps a very close eye on that. I thought we were better off a number of years ago than many companies, but with some study, there were areas for improvement, and we made those changes immediately. We have a diversity, equity and inclusion committee, which is probably one of the most engaged committees I've ever seen within our company. And we are aiming to walk the talk and to ensure that we are inclusive. A lot to do with race in particular. And it just, it brings me to a thought that, we mentioned excuses earlier on, and I do feel that, we can say in Maine, well, we don't have that diverse pool of candidates. So then instead of saying we don't have that diverse pool of candidates, how do we get that diverse pool of candidates? And I think COVID, actually, there's a silver lining there. That will change for us, which is great. We're pretty excited about that. I think also, we have paternity leave. We have, the gender is treated equally when it comes to all policies within the company. But it's keeping an eye on it, and I think the change starts within your own company, and doing everything you can to make sure that it is inclusive, regardless gender, race, sexual orientation, creed, anything. So I think that starts within, and that's what we're trying to do.
May I ask a clarifying question of Mary? You said COVID helped. Is that because you're changing your policy around home office or work locations? Is that the link?
That is the link, yeah, that we will be able to, well, it's been proven now that we'd be able to, we can't just say somebody has to be living in Portland, Maine. We can broaden the opportunities for candidates from elsewhere. And we did have a good number of people who were remote employees, but now it's much more, I feel it's much more accepted, which allows us to reach out to broader geographical areas. But we're doing a lot actually within our immigrant community as well. New Mainers, we're doing what we can in the community to highlight that we are an employer and a good employer. So we're doing everything we can to make ourselves visible, because we don't do any business in the state of Maine, so a lot of people don't necessarily know who we are.
Okay, thank you. Koussée, do you want to add something to Mary's comment?
Yeah, I think it's maybe less sophisticated than what is done in Mary's company, but so we have all the KPIs for gender equality. But as we are in France, everything that is about diversity, we can't have any KPIs because it's not authorized to have statistics linked to ethnical origins or skin color. So this is not followed, and it's we know in marketing and in the management that without KPIs, without following, we can't monitor change.
Okay, thank you so much, Koussée. We have a couple of questions. One from Danica Tormolen from the US. Where is she? Danica, would you like to ask your question? Can
Sure.
we unmute her? Yes.
Okay. Yes, I was just wondering, does anyone have any formal mentorship or sponsorship programs at your organizations? And if so, how do they work?
Who wants to pick this question?
I can reply for Comexposium. There is no mentorship program, but I really think that it's something that you really need in your life. And it's not necessary to have it in your company. It can be very enriching to have people from outside your company mentoring you. And it can be from your school, from your business school, I mean, or your so your studies, your previous work experience. So many ways, but I had mentors all throughout my career, and it's really something that that helps you. So it's really something everybody should seek out, look for it. Yeah.
I would just
Harry,
say, briefly, we do have a mentorship program. I would call it semi-formal. You know, it's there, it's available. It typically is with another senior leader in the company. But I honestly feel the success is when the mentee is really engaged. But we do have executive coaching available, and that has been utilized. I was, I think, one of the first candidates way back when, which was life-changing, I would say. And also the sponsorship program, I don't know that it's a formal program. I think it's really on the manager or the senior executive to sponsor and put their political capital on the line for an employee. And I've started to do that a little bit more than in the past. You know, I think that's where people get a leg up, as it were.
Okay, thank you, Mary. One more question from Bernd Roth. I don't see you, Bernd, but is he muted?
Yes, I'm unmuted now.
Great.
Thank you very much, Mina. Yes, one question that is very discussed in Mexico currently is the topic of the quotas. Do you think that short-term quotas would solve the problem, not only concerning women, but also, for example, the LGBT community or other minorities? Would that really help?
Who wants to take this question?
I'm happy to start on quotas. You know, I have a mixed relationship with quotas, and to Koussée's point, well, KPIs in general. I think measurement is critical, and having clear goals and so forth is really important. In terms of quotas, I think quotas are substitutes for poor leadership. So in terms of if you have really good leadership, and from the CEO on down, true commitment to getting something done, whether it's diversity or of all types, as you mentioned, then you don't really need quotas. You manage it, you have clear KPIs. But the problem is that in order to compensate for poor leadership, I think we have no choice but to rely on quotas, because it gives us the assurance then that companies are going to do the right thing. So it's a very mixed relationship that I have with quotas. But unfortunately, the bottom line is I think they are important and necessary.
I would agree with Hervé that I also have the mixed opinion or mixed feelings about quotas. You know, a number of years back at UFI, we had this discussion, and it actually played out on the stage with Vaneecke Mueller from Hong Kong and myself talking about quotas. And I personally was against quotas. I think that's a really good descriptor, Hervé, that it is an excuse for poor leadership. Because if you don't believe in it, it's never going to evolve. And I think it allows you to check a box, you know, that well, I've taken care of that's that job done, when really the opportunity for a company is much greater. So my opinion on quotas is short term is probably the way to go. And Vanecke's theory on it, and I don't want to speak for her, I don't know if she's on the call today, but her theory was you have to start somewhere. And my theory was, if you're the good leader, you are doing this anyhow. And so I think somewhere in the middle is probably the right spot, and that's probably those short-term quotas.
Yes, and I should add, thank you, Mary and Hervé, and I should add that it works. It works in the last law in France that forces big companies to have 30% of women in boards. It works. So it worked, and that's the most important thing.
Thank you all. One more question. It feels like there is a bit of a fatigue from sessions like this, raising this topic, but we still have not fixed the problem. So what else can we be doing from now on?
Well, who wants to go? I agree. I'm fatigued talking about it. You know, I'm with everyone else. And I've been as UFI president last year. I was involved in a lot of these conversations because it was an initiative of mine to try and highlight the issue globally within our industry. And I do think there's fatigue, and you know, I don't know how we do move forward, because if I think, here's the thing, and with all due respect to all the men out there, right now, 90% of men are leading exhibition companies around the world, and the change has to start at the top. And I'm going to put my neck out in the line and say it has to start with them, and we have got to have. They control the purse strings. They can, you know, if you think about, I had an employee come to me talking about access to leadership. And what she said was that the men in the company, even though they're 30% of the whole company, have more opportunities to access leadership through golf games, through voting or different events. And that in turn, it goes back to that visibility, that in turn impacts someone's career. Are they visible for a promotion? Therefore that impacts their pay. Go back to Koussée's point, get paid more now. When you are visible, you are seen as being a potential for an opportunity that comes up. So we're changing that. We are looking at how do we make it more visible. What ended up happening was I ended up running a wine tasting at my home, and like the night before a business trip or something like that. You know, it was just, and it was for women to have access to senior leadership. So I think really how it's going to change and how we're going to eliminate the fatigue of talking about it all the time. And I think that the diversity in race and sexual orientation, I think that's really only beginning as well. But it's got to start with the leadership. When it's reflected there, it's important to everyone else.
Thank you, Mary. Koussée, would you like to add something? Or that?
To add something, no, it's more about how to take action. So I will say to take action on diversity because it includes gender, and I would say that to have more diversity, it's not about only hiring people from diversity. It's also about retention. Retention of this profile, because I have noticed over the years that these people are easily dismissed, or they leave to start their own companies, and there are very few at the beginning. And so most of us agree that we should have more diversity, but if we want more diversity, what is important is to be more welcoming. I mean that diversity, it means that people are different. It means that they think differently, they do different things in their spare time, they have different political opinions. And so welcoming, I mean that it's listening to this opinion, respect them, and encourage people to express them. And to do so, I think that you need to be aware that for people like me, people that when people see us, they see that we are different. So we try very hard to fit in, you know, to find common grounds, find common to melt in, to fit in. And so what is good for the company, what is good for the workplace is to have these different people express what is different, express their opinions. And to encourage people to express this difference, they need to feel secure, to be welcomed, and have the possibility to bring their full self to the workplace. And so I would say that the action for I would like people to take would be the welcome. So be more welcoming to the diversity.
Thank you, Koussée. It's very interesting what you said. Before organizing this session, we had a strong campaign in the social media channels of UFI, and we asked women to make small videos and to share their view on equality in exhibition. And we had women who didn't feel they could participate because they would be seen like troublemakers, or it will give the wrong impression. So this is in line with what you say. And as Koussée shared her tip for taking action, Hervé, what is your top tip for how a man or a woman can make a difference today to create a more gender equal industry? In 1 or 2 minutes, please. Thank you.
I'll be quick. I think from my perspective, men have a lot to learn, like myself. And participating on this panel, as an example, very selfishly, is really about being part of the conversation so that I can learn and develop as a leader. That's really why I joined the panel, not because I have any wisdom to share or that I think that I know how to solve this issue, but by being part of the conversation and by putting yourself out there in an environment where you have no choice. You're not hiding behind anything. You learn and you grow. And I really would say the big tip for me, if I may say, I guess are two things. One, I would strongly encourage that men be part of the dialogue. So Mary, I don't mean that I'm looking for an invite to your wine tasting, although I'd like that. But I really think that if men can be more part, and Mary and I have had this discussion, for instance, at the CISO meeting where there is a women's leadership conference, and I asked Mary, why isn't it part of the actual conference itself? Why? Because I think it would be so much more helpful for men to be part of the dialogue so that we can understand the issues. I really fundamentally don't believe that we actually really understand the issues. And so I think that's the biggest tip. And the second one is an obvious one, which is CEOs and senior leadership have to be held accountable. And CEOs are very much held accountable to financial performance of their companies. I think the measures of success have to be significantly broader than that and have to include diversity.
Thank you very much, Hervé. And Mary, what is your top tip?
Actually, Hervé's given me a couple of ideas there for so we have had the conversation. I said at the beginning, I do think its leadership is accountable, and it needs to start there. I also when I heard your comment about the woman who did not want to participate because she was going to be viewed as a troublemaker, that's exactly how I felt on that stage a number of years ago, and on the same stage as Hervé, so we've come full circle, Hervé. But I do see that, and I think this is a geographical divide or a cultural divide. In the US, we want men at the table. We want them in to hear what the discussion, what the challenges are. And why it hasn't been a part of the main program at CISO before is because we didn't get a slot, and we've been asking for a few years. But something has changed where it's viewed as an opportunity to have the discussion. It was only that first year when we brought up the issue. And I think it's because at that point, CEOs had other things that were equally as important, and that's what they wanted to talk about during the main CEO program. So in the US, I think we want to have men at the table, and I think there's a drive to have men come to the Women's CEO Summit or the leadership summit in August. I think when I had that discussion, I think sitting on a boat going through the river in Bangkok, speaking with some women about about this opportunity, they said that they did not feel comfortable with men in the room, that these men were their bosses and they did not feel that it was a safe place to have those discussions. So I think that this is where I'm going to the term is choose to challenge. So, you know, we do have an announcement coming up, but I think I'm going to choose to challenge that we make this a priority right now, so that all of you who are tired listening to me talk about it, or you know, all the women who have been involved in driving women's leadership forward, and there are many. I'm like looking at Martha right now, and I can see Laurie. You know, so there are many women who are involved in that. Sonia and UFI, how do we make it happen sooner, so that the conversation is not a separate conversation, that the issue goes away, so that it's no longer an issue. So that's why I choose to challenge.
Thank you, Mary. And before wrapping up, we would like to share this new initiative that Mary mentioned. Pascal, can you share the slide? Perfect, thank you. So I will let the floor to Mary just for 1 minute. Over to you, Mary.
Okay, so I would say one thing I've talked about, and we've been looking for a way to do it at UFI, and COVID got in the way, but you know, we're going to meet that challenge, and we are forming a female leadership special interest group. So that's open to all female members of UFI. So your companies, if you are members of UFI, you can get involved. Our first meeting is going to be on April 6th, and that's where we're going to talk about what we want to do and what we want to achieve and how to move forward. So I'm going to take the lead on this, but I would love to be able to highlight other women in the industry who are really interested in making change. So April 6th is our first Zoom discussion. I look forward to when we can hold a women's special interest group meeting in person in I think it's Rotterdam, maybe in November. And so I'm hopeful that we will be able to do it in person. My own experience, Courtney Muller, Dana Teague, and myself were the people who formed the Women's Special Interest Group at CISO. We have a great group of women who really do work on both the conferences, talk about issues. Yeah, sometimes we talk about shoes, but that's okay too. And so there is a really good networking opportunity if you want to look at it just from pure business perspective. But I would also suggest, if there are men who are really interested to be a part of this, to join us on April 6th as well.
Thank you, Mary. So it was absolutely fantastic hearing you today. Thank you very much for sharing your vision on this major topic. I guess the industry is very lucky to have wonderful people like you. Women definitely play a huge role in the industry. And thank you all for joining us today. I would like to thank warmly, very warmly, Sonia Thomas, who launched this topic with Mary within UFI. And thank you to the UFI team involved, Caitlin, Karen, Pascal, Anna, and everyone involved. Thanks again to our sponsors. Pascal, can you share the slide, please? TSEP, Qatar, Shenzhen, World, and Freeman. So as you know, we have more UFI Connects coming soon. Please check our website, ufi.org/UFI Connects. And that's it for today. Thank you very much and see you very, very soon. Have a good day.